Hello, friends. I'm so glad to be talking to David Johnson today. He has been a friend from a very, very long time. We have been working together at Hpathy for nearly 15, 20 years to now. And David has been an amazing support to the whole project. And Dave is one of the finest prescribers I know, especially of the modern approaches, the kingdom approach, the family approach, the Sholton's periodic table approach, and his articles and cases at Hpathy are worth reading. So I urge all of you to go ahead and enjoy those cases and articles that David has shared with us at hpathy.com. And today is the day we'll have a freewheeling conversation with Dave about his journey in homeopathy and where he began from and where he is now. So, Dave, welcome to Hpathy Hotseat. It's a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you, Manish.
My first question to you would be where did your journey of homeopathy begin? Like, can you take us back to your early days in homeopathy and what initially drew you towards homeopathy and how did your thinking evolve over time?
I was first exposed to homeopathy back in my early 20s, and it helped me with a couple of acute situations, an acute Achilles tendonitis and some acne, and but I really lost sight of that as I got into conventional medical training, and I was fortunate to work in a number of different areas and taught clinical medicine. But what that allowed me to do was to see the general approach that was used throughout conventional medicine, whether you're in a medical setting or a surgical setting. And so it's a fairly simple progression of how they assess a problem. It wasn't until one of my best students uh, casually told me that she used homeopathic remedies for her kids that I was like, well, do those really work? And I kind of knew the answer, but she just shrugged her shoulders and said, of course. And so that opened me up to looking back at homeopathy, and I started reading the philosophy, and I was really shocked in a sense to realize I had no guiding philosophy to what I was doing except to make symptoms go away. And when I saw that there was a broader dynamic that homeopathy was describing and correctly critiquing what I was doing in conventional medicine, then I became even more intrigued and just was more a question of, well, they can correctly critique what I'm doing, but do their remedies work? And then, of course, gradually I was introduced to the more simple acute remedies and gradually that grew and I, enrolled in school, started way back from the beginning, trying to remember what arnica was. Is that the one for bruises? And so uh, that was the early days. I did notice early on when I was in class that I, I didn't realize that the mineral kingdom or the periodic table was coming more easily for me. I didn't really feel any, big aha moment with the periodic table. It just was made intuitive sense how it was laid out.
What was the point where you realized that the conventional materia medica and repertory are not enough and that you need some more tools to simplify your prescription, to improve your prescription?
One of the things that was happening at the school where I was studying was that the instructors were quite comfortable with prescribing mineral salts that weren't commonly prescribed, meaning that if you saw something that looked like a calcarea carbonica history, you would also want to explore, could this be a calcarea sulfuricum, calcarea arsenicosum, calcarea nitricum, calcarea muriaticum? That was part of our curriculum. And so I would see that I had to use the repertoire in a different way if I was going to prescribe like this, that I would see a couple different elements coming up. And then see if the combination of the two of them would cover the essentially the totality of the case. And so that did come more easily for me in the beginning. In fact, the first couple people I saw actually needed calcarea nitricum. And the person that was mentoring me said, "No, there's no way that you're going to have two of those in a row." And sure enough, then he said, "Yes, yes, I have to admit it. That they were both calcarea nitricum, and they did well on that remedy." Anyway, so I understood that facet of homeopathy pretty well and could use the repertory in a more flexible way. But when Jan Scholten came out with his second book of Homeopathy and the Elements, I just thought it was a bridge too far. I couldn't really understand it. I didn't feel like I could apply it in practice. And it wasn't until I went to a seminar in Vermont with Jaya Shah that I thought, oh wow, Jan Scholten was correct. I mean, at least in spirit, and maybe not all the details were completely fleshed out, but that was the really the starting point for me to uh, begin moving across the table into these areas of the uh, periodic table that, are just not going to come up well in repertorization. So at that point, I started just realizing that I was only going to get so far with the repertory because it was going to be based on what had come from past experience. And stepping into this new territory, I had to trust that what I what I had seen from Jan Scholten and um, even perhaps more importantly from Jaya Shah that this was a reliable method.
Yeah, Dr. Jaysha is a wonderful teacher. Yeah.
Yes.
Are there any other teachers whom you learned from, especially these newer approaches?
No, you know what happened was that at least for this, I was working all by myself. So it was really the clients that were coming in, and I was just really amazed because they were teaching me. They were literally having me move from left to right across the table and then from top to bottom. I would have a question, and within a week or two, somebody would come in answering that question like laying it out on a silver platter. And it was just incredible, really. And so I was really relying on them to fill in my gaps in knowledge and let's see, was there, of course, there was a sensation method, but the sensation method I found seemed to work a bit better with the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, uh, perhaps a little bit more than the mineral kingdom. uh, there is structure, of course, in the mineral kingdom, but then there's also in the elements, there's elements that we think of more as gases, like the noble gases or hydrogen or heat, so on. So, uh, that's a tool that we can use, but no one conceptual model is going to be able to fit all situations.
So, for somebody who is uninitiated in this periodic table approach, how would you explain this approach to someone who is just beginning or has not
Sure.
yet gone deeper into this approach?
Yeah, well, it's a simple model, really. So the simplicity of this model really is that each of these horizontal lines or series or rows have a theme, and that theme is related to a setting in which a particular dilemma is occurring. And the vertical columns have to do with mostly sense of inner capacity, but they also have to do with connection. So there's connection at the two ends of the vertical columns in the table, and through the middle of the table, it has to do more with sense of inner capacity. So when you have the intersection of the two themes, a particular setting and a particular sense of inner capacity, you can predict, okay, so this person may need, let's say, niobium metallicum for a person who's in a setting of creative expression. Let's say they're a musician and they can make progress, but when they're taking their music to the next level, then they falter, and then they step back. There's a slipping back into the a baseline. So a forward back, frustrating experience within a creative setting would indicate the niobium. We would add an anion or second part of the compound to that to further qualify the person's experience. And so it's actually fairly simple. Just if we had a red color that had a personality and we had a yellow color that has a personality, the intersection is going to be orange and it's going to be the merging of those two personalities, those two energies. And that gets easier and easier to do. But we start with,
Let's can we do an example regarding let's take a very common remedy, calcarea, and now how does the picture change between calcarea nitricum, calcarea phosphorica, and calcarea sulf? Because now the rows are changing. So
right.
how does that work?
Well, so the anions are, there's about 10 or 11 main anions. And we don't necessarily have to use that row method for the anions that much. We can just understand the personality of arsenicum and bromatum and carbonicum and so forth, fluoratum, iodatum. But we do use the other intersection for the cation, the first part of the compound. So actually, if I could switch it from calcarea to Cali, I think it might be a little bit easier. We're all familiar with Cali carbonicum and our first step into organizing the world. And it's got a little bit of a rigidity because we're kind of new at organizing the world. So we organize it in terms of black and white, right and wrong, this us and them. Now, Cali Carb has that, very structured approach to life and regimented, if you will. Now, all of a sudden, you look at the rubrics for Kali Bromatum, and you've got a rubric, delusion is singled out for divine wrath. Well, what the heck? What the heck just happened that you drop the carbon and you add a bromine, and now the person feels singled out for divine wrath? Well, in that case, you've got Kali as the ultimate judge. God is judging, and bromine is I've done something bad and I'm in trouble. And more specifically, the bromine is going to have something to do with a break in connection. If we go to Kali sulf, then you're going to see a little bit more of a feeling of a desire for appreciation and some of the other keynotes that you would see for sulfur, running warm and so forth. Uh, let's see, iodatum. Iodine has this quick aspect to it, and it's not just quick in terms of the physical, it's also quick thinking. So we see iodatum under the rubric jesting. So there's kind of this, quick thinking juxtaposed with this kind of rigid way of going about life. And so then we see this quick thinking sort of finding funny twists to the rigidity or within that rigidity. Um, let's see, Califloratum is a very interesting remedy because the Cali is about right and wrong, and fluoride is about appearances. So now all of a sudden the very definite right and wrong is being confused with appearances. And if any of you are familiar with that term gaslighting, a person that gets califluoratum is not going to like to be gaslighted because it's going to bring up this dilemma that they already have experienced, let's say growing up in childhood, where truth and fiction were confused with each other.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. It's easier to figure out the right remedy if you know the patterns.
Yes.
But when you started learning this approach, did it change your case taking? method?
Uh, I still needed to use the fundamentals of case taking, sound case taking, like, not interrupting people and so forth. But what it did allow me to do, it wasn't so much that something looked different on the outside, but on the inside, I was able to organize the information that they were giving me more clearly because we all have ways of connecting or not connecting with others. We all have a certain sense of inner capacity when we're stepping into new challenges. Now, that may not be the gist of the case, but if it isn't, for example, I can remove that aspect of the history out where the person's says an aside about something about connection or something about confidence, but really the core of their case is something different. But at least it allows me to uh, take that part of the history away to more focus on what is the core feeling. Let's say, sense of persecution, worthlessness, desire for revenge, and so forth, that would might be better fit with the plant or animal kingdom. So I do like to, if I have somebody where the history is hard to kind of get to and they're pretty guarded, these are pretty safe questions. How do you share your vulnerabilities? Do you share them in a one-to-one? Do you share them with a small group? Do you never share them? Those are questions that are based on the noble gases in the first column and the second column. These are safe questions that draw the person in without them feeling like they've got to put up their defenses. The same thing can happen when you're asking a person about their sense of inner capacity with a new situation, that they are in a very safe way going into a more reflective state. And then that allows for some of the other deeper distress to more easily come forward rather than feeling like it's under the spotlight all at once.
Makes a lot of sense. Uh, you are coming up with a new course at Hpathy Global Academy, which is titled From Pattern to Prescription, Mastering the
Yes.
Periodic Table Approach. Uh, how should a young homeopath learn to look for patterns in what the patient is saying? Because I feel that this is something, this is an art, this is a skill. You hear a lot of things that the patient says, uh, but then you are at sometimes lost between the words of the patient, the intent of the patient, and the approach that you want to follow. Suppose you want to follow keynote approach, you want to follow repertorial approach, you want to use sensation method. Uh, Now, how does one unhinge himself from these approaches and this prior knowledge and just focus on the patterns so that they
Hmm.
can, uh, because without seeing the patterns, it's impossible to classify the patient into any series or columns to find the intersection. So, how does what should a young homeopath do in his case taking or in his approach in how they receive the patient so that they are more observant of the patterns in the patient and how they can elicit it better?
Yes, okay. Well, I learned something from a homeopath one time where I couldn't understand anything else about what was going on with the course in terms of materia medica. But two things were very important that were shared. And one is to listen to where the person is most limited, and also don't make nice. Don't try to apologize for the patient saying that they want to kill somebody. If they say it, you have to say something that feels uncomfortable. Uh, you don't have to pounce on it right away, but you hear where they're most limited, and don't try to make it lighter in a nicer remedy so that this clarifies the history quite a bit too, because a lot of history will be narrative. The doctor told me this, I've been diagnosed with this, and so any of the story is really not where we're trying to look for a pattern. We're trying to really understand where is the dilemma? Where are they most limited as a human being? So is it is it an issue, let's say, of nurturing? Is it an issue of abandonment, of self-worth, well, the homeopathy covers practically every conceivable issue you could look for, anger and violence and fears and so forth. So that's what I felt was most important for me, and that also helps a lot with the sensation method, even though this is different, but to really hear where is the person most limited and then begin to have them describe more about their experience of that. Not the story, not about how they can use tools to not think that way, or some spiritual framework for the thing, but where do they go in that instant when they feel that flash of anger or they feel that moment of fear or you know problems with self-worth and so forth. So that's one of the things that I would say is that a fundamental in case taking is separate the story, the narrative, from where is the person most limited, and then explore their experience of that limitation. Because they could say, I get angry, and then I say, oh yeah, I know what it's like to get angry, but it may be completely different from my experience. Um, in terms of patterns with respect to the periodic table, uh, we know that those are going to be uh, related. The first three rows are going to be related to developmental experiences and dilemmas with respect to either incarnating, developing a sense of individual identity, and the third line is really the challenges of social interaction. So that would cover that area of the table. And then all of these things that we learned in our development then are applied to the world of task orientation, creative expression, greater responsibility to others. And then at the deepest levels of the table with the radioactive elements, I've got to hold myself together so I don't start to unravel, so things don't fall apart. And we've really lost our sense of lightheartedness, joy, and spontaneity of childhood at that point.
Do you offhand remember some cases, one or two cases, where this approach helped you a lot?
Well, actually, thousands, but I was just thinking of one that happened the other day. It was just maybe 2 weeks ago. And so I have a person who's 83 that has done well with constitutional care. And I didn't hear from her directly. I heard from one of her common friends that she had gotten extremely sick and had a very bad cough where she felt like she was suffocating. And and uh, so this was they felt her friends felt like this was COVID, even though it hadn't been diagnosed, but it was at that level of severity. So I knew that this person was a one-to-one person already, that she shared only in a one-to-one dynamic. And I thought about where the pathology was, which is the respiratory. I thought, well, perhaps there's a Cali in this mix with that emphasis in the respiratory for Cali, at least one of its emphases. So um, I held that loosely. And then I knew that she was also someone who was willing to jump into new challenges without a lot of preparation, but she wanted to get into the fight, so to speak. And that's the eighth column. And the eighth column of the table is just that, the willingness to take on a challenge, not necessarily preparing, but at least I owe it to myself to try. So you could say that she was fighting to breathe. There were some phrases that were used that were like that. She's fighting to breathe. And So ferrum, iron, I need to test my metal, is in the eighth column. Then I thought about the suffocation that she was feeling. I'm suffocating. And uh, suffocation is an experience that happens with cyanide. A carbon nitrogen molecule triple bonded, neither can escape from each other. And it is often associated with a toxic, suffocating experience from which one cannot escape. And in fact, she is very family oriented. She just loved the family get togethers. But in recent years, there was a very toxic dynamic that started developing within the family. And it was one that was not going to be solved. At least there didn't appear to be any resolution to it. So she's got the Cali, both in terms of the physical problem, we could say the family orientation, and she has the willingness to take on a new fight. So there's a ferrum and cyanotum. So the remedy I gave her was Cali ferrocyanotum, potassium, iron, carbon, nitrogen. And she noticed a difference after the very first dose. And this was a Monday afternoon. She wanted to be, no, it was a Tuesday. It was a Tuesday, and she wanted to be going on vacation, leaving for vacation Thursday morning. And she was completely recovered by Thursday morning, an 83-year-old with that severe of a cough. So that was just a simple example with an acute case where knowing what we already know with materia medica can be supplemented by these tools with respect to the uh, understanding of the relationships within the periodic table.
That was a very nice prescription. I would have missed it. And like me, I feel that a lot of people who are not well versed in this approach would have missed this prescription. Uh, so I feel that the course that you're coming up with, which starts on 25th of April,
Mhm.
gives all of us an opportunity to master this approach with you and learn from your experience of the past 20 years.
Yes. I realized when I wrote the book that I wrote was I realized that things needed to be taught in a sequential way because you can't jump at an end kind of concept before understanding the basics. So the course is going to unfold in a very kind of get the fundamentals down, then we stretch from there until the most, let's say, challenging uh, application of this, but it really, again, returns back to a fairly simple idea of the intersection of themes, and that we will come back to that and then, have some examples and so forth. So it will be very much geared for people of different levels. That I think that a person who just knows the basics of the polycrest will be able to benefit from it, as well as someone who's been in practice for a number of years, just because of what clients have taught me and what I learned through having to write that book and really clarify my own thinking about how do we distinguish, for example, silica from fluoride and so forth. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes, we did. We forgot to mention about your book. Can you tell us more about that? What's the title and
The title is Radiance, Resonance, and Healing, the homeopathic periodic table. I thought when people were saying, "Oh, you should write a book," and I thought, well, I didn't feel any, desire to do that necessarily. But after a while, it's like, okay, I should be able to get this all done in maybe a year. And, it was almost 10 years of refining the ideas and understanding how to present the ideas in a logical, sequential way. And but I look back at the book from time to time now and feel like the information is largely still very applicable. I don't really see anything that I would just feel like, oh, that's that's a problem, it's 8 years later. It's still, in my opinion, still very solid fundamentals. And by the time that somebody would see some area that they would debate, they wouldn't need the book at that point.
10 years is such a long time. You definitely need a remedy in the rubric perseverance.
Something, you're right. It's in that neighborhood. Yes.
I am pretty impatient with my books. Like I need to like start and finish in a couple of months, otherwise I can't complete them.
Yes.
So yeah. So friends, this is a great opportunity for all of us to learn from David's very long experience and clinical excellence that he has. His last 20 years of learning, writing about it, teaching, refining, and practicing this method. He's one of the best teachers today that we have to master John Cholton's path-breaking approach in homeopathy regarding the periodic table. So I encourage and invite all of you to take up his course. Just visit hpathy.org, the website for the Hpathy Global Academy, and sign up for Dave's new course from pattern to prescribing, mastering the periodic table approach. And there is a QR code also in the next screen. You can just scan the QR code or click on the link in the description to reach directly to the course URL. I hope to see all of you there because I definitely would be there.
Okay. Thank you, Manish.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. It was pleasure talking to you,
You
and
too. Yeah.
we'll keep learning from each other.
I really
Thank you.
look forward to the course, and I'll see you soon.
Same here. Take care. Bye bye. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
Yeah.